And wow, first of all, happy Monday, Mindfulness Mondays. And Beverly, Kyer, we are so glad to see you. You look wonderful.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back, that I'm still here to be back. Thank
Yes, and I know you have an important message to share, and I want everyone to stop what they're doing and listen to this because what she is getting ready to share with us, what Beverly is getting ready to share with us, can save your life. I'm going to be taking notes because this could theoretically happen to anyone. So go
you.
ahead, Beverly.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Happy week ahead. I felt obligated to share. I felt like a moral obligation to share with you what's happened because I think it may be more prevalent than people know. Years ago, I was meeting a new internist who had a very holistic approach to healthcare and medicine. And she was asking me a number of questions to get to know me. And she asked me questions about my work and my lifestyle, and understanding that my work is very trauma laden, very stress laden, very heavy laden. She made a comment. She says, Beverly, you had, she was speaking in regards to the heart failure episodes that I had had prior to meeting her. And she said, what you had was broken heart syndrome. And just the very term of that is broken heart syndrome. That made sense to me, again, given the work that I do. But I thought at the time that it was just being more symbolic of the work that I do until now. Until now that I learned that broken heart syndrome is a real thing, a real thing. I was handed, when I left the hospital on last Wednesday, a document, which is really my patient discharge papers and instructions, which had the diagnosis and the description and all of the precautionary things that I am to do as follow up care. And it's from that I'm sharing with you. This is not me speaking to you as a doctor. This is simply sharing as your colleague and your friend uh, what I have. The condition is called Tokotsubo. Tokotsubo cardiomyopathy. For short, let's just call it TCM. It is known as broken heart syndrome. And as I said, it is a real thing. It is a real thing. They say that this condition is rare. And this is my one of two opinions I have about it, that it's not rare. I suspect more people may have it than people realize, particularly those of us who work in the human services areas and the family caregiving kind of services, where we're working with people intensely impacted by traumatic experiences, and we take that on and we absorb those experiences, those stories, those events, those scenarios. So I think it is more prevalent than people know. It's not easy to diagnose, and I'm going to explain to you about the confusion of how it presents, what people were looking for and did not see when I was hospitalized. And they also said that the majority of cases of TCM are women, like 90% of them. This is my second opinion. I doubt that as well. When you talk about stress, is my one of my perhaps even a bias that men may not report as often that they're feeling stressed by the situations. People who, men again, who work in those same kinds of situations, whether they're rescue workers, recovery people, medical providers, social workers, counselors, whatever, they may not report the stress impacts on them, and therefore this too could be misdiagnosed. But anyway, TCM is a real thing. It is a type of heart condition also known as stress induced cardiomyopathy or broken heart syndrome. The condition is characterized by sudden dysfunction of the left ventricle of the heart, accompanied by symptoms that actually resemble those of a heart attack. But it occurs in the absence of significant coronary artery diseases. That's part of the confusion. It did not present with any blockage, any artery clogging, or any valve issue. That was absent. That's why it wasn't clear what was going on. Uh, it causes sudden chest pain. Oh my God, horrific. And it is maybe also great difficulty in breathing. That was my case, struggling to get a breath and find each breath very, very painful. The name Takotsubo comes from the appearance of the heart muscle on an echocardiogram. The main pumping chamber becomes dilated, actually balloons, and the muscle does not move while the base becomes constricted. In other words, I'm saying it reshaped the heart into a distinctive round bottomed, narrow neck form resembling that of an old Japanese octopus trap by the same name, Takatsubo. About 10 to 15% of people who have it, uh, the episode, will have another one, and possibly more than one. That's why I want you to know about this. In those who do have further episodes, the trigger can be different each time because it's any number of stresses that could cause this. The bad news, though, broken heart syndrome can lead now to severe short term heart muscle failure. So, this by having it, a heightened risk for this. The good news, though, that broken heart syndrome is usually treatable. Most people who experience it can make a absolutely full recovery, and you got to know I'm claiming that for myself. So, though in rare cases, they say it can be fatal. And so the event for me, it was on January 18th on Monday. Actually, I had done the broadcast with Linus. Linus and I had our production meeting. And then when we finished, I had about 10 to 15 minutes before I was to get on another session with another group at 12:30. I remember that. And I was to be with them. And even after that, I had another session at 5. Yet the phone rang in those 8 to 10 minutes that I had. And I answered the phone. Now, I could have not taken that call. I could have paused before I took that, yet I answered the phone. And the answer to why I did not keep that 10 minutes to decompress myself, to take care of myself, the answer to that question rests in the hearts of all of us who are so deeply wired to help others. There's no single reason, no single reason. It could have waited. However, I come to the conclusion it is who we are. It's who we are that'll make us make that choice, make that decision in that moment. And when I answered that phone, uh, I took the message. The content was traumatic, it was grievous, it was very upsetting. But this is what I'm used to. This is what I'm used to. This is what I do. They really asked me not to take on the case, but to refer the information out to somebody else who could help these people in this awful situation. And then, like I said, with just a few minutes to go, I hung up the phone. I reached to make a note on a sticky pad of who I was going to call later after my 12:30 event. And when I reached for that pad, my chest exploded. And so I was into the situation. So I said, this, I can't understand why I did it, yet I understand myself. Almost couldn't help myself. It was spontaneous. It was an auto drive. And as much as I say that is who we are, however, I want to say that that was one heck of a wake up call. A heck of a, demanding that I do things different, demanding that I reevaluate how I conduct my life, reevaluate myself. To think about that, and I did a lot of thinking because there was little else that I could do. All of our lives have been shifted in so many ways and continues to shift so dramatically for us that it requires a major shift in our thinking, in our plans, and in our actions for self care. As I say, I don't believe it was a single event, i.e., the call that caused that episode of heart failure, but I believe it was a multiplicity of things that's going on for all of us all the time, the cumulative and compounded and exacerbating scenarios of what we are facing in this country for the past 11 years and months and even beyond that, and they kind of continue on. One of the primary reasons I am sharing this with all of you is the question I had for myself, and that is how I allowed this to happen, how I allowed myself to get to this state where I, again, severely injured my own health. And I take responsibility for that because it was about my choices. My mission, as you know, over the past 2 decades and more, has been to help human service providers and caregivers around the country to understand and address and mitigate the effects of the enormous levels of stress we face, the secondary traumas, the vicarious traumas, the burnout, traumatic stress disorder, i.e., the compassion fatigue that we face. So, what did I miss? Uh, what was I not paying attention to? And was I not diligent enough with my own self care practices to be in integrity with you and especially in integrity with myself? I realized upon deep reflection that I made some unwise decisions about what was important to notice, to be aware of internally, not just externally about what's going on, and emotionally. Uh, uh, I didn't pay attention to it. I skipped some things. I minimized some things. I rationalized some things to decide what was important, what was not important for me to pay attention to. There's a COVID-19, all of the various scenarios and issues related to it personally and professionally are very, very grievous to me, to us. The racial unrest in the country, aspects of that, many aspects of that shreds my soul. The siege on the Capitol, I could talk for hours about what that, the implications of that, the vertical and the horizontal implications of the involvement there and what that meant for the country. The elections leading up to that and the post election fears. It's not over. The fight goes on. And under the barrage of all of these events coming at us, I began to move too fast. I figured that out. So fast that I lost track of me. And I suspect many, if not most of you, do the same. So then there was the symptoms as it hit me. Sudden and strong chest pain. It was almost unbearable. Uh, the pain this time began to permeate across my arms, my shoulders. The shortness of breath, which was a hell of a struggle. Feeling faint, feeling extremely dizzy, very lightheaded. My son said I lost the color in my face. It was a pale appearance and sudden and severe fatigue and sweating. And the fatigue, incidentally, in retrospect, it had been coming because I remember saying to some people for some days uh, before that happened that I just felt this kind of tiredness. It didn't make any sense to me because I do tend to go to bed and I felt that I was sleeping well, but it was another kind of fatigue, and I want to attribute that to an emotional fatigue. And I began to sweep, and then, of course, breaking out in a sweat. Those are some more possible symptoms. And I wouldn't say that everybody gets the symptoms. The doctors told me that it can show up and manifest in different ways. Particularly, remember women that we do often present different with heart failure than men do. And it could be, your ethnicity, where you come from, and all kinds of things. There's no one way of looking at this. But what is imperative is that we talk and we learn more, we become more aware, and we share this information with our medical practitioners. The consequences, though, of me making that poor judgment was the confusion about this being a heart attack or not being a heart attack. And that's a scary experience. Let me say, in the ambulance, they said she's having a heart attack because some of the indicators that they had showed that my response to nitroglycerin showed that, and then I wasn't responding, and I was responding. They called it in, but when I got to the hospital, somebody said, "No, this is not a heart attack," and they were trying to figure out. And then another doctor says, "Well, it is," and another person says it isn't, and that's a very, very scary thing to realize that people don't know exactly what's going on. The other consequences was extreme physical distress. The panic of that ride in the ambulance, of seeing people scrambling the oxygen therapy, the intravenous fluids, the cardiac catheterization surgery the very next morning, which was exploratory to try to figure out what is going on, and all the ifs. The ifs were, well, if they find something when they get in there, I had to sign off that they could take some action and do some kind of fix. The diuretics I have to take, the beta blockers I have to take, the ACE inhibitors to help my heart recover, and the blood thinners to prevent a stroke. These are all considerations I have to be acutely aware of and on top of now. So there were some new learnings for me, new learnings. And among those, and there'll be many more, that's I do want to have ongoing discussions with them with you. But some for me was that stress can alter the very architecture of your body. That's why I say Broken heart syndrome is a real thing. It really reshaped, it misshapened my heart by ballooning it into that thing. That's something to think about. The stress could do that. Change the shape and architecture of your heart or other places perhaps in your body. Another learning is having knowledge about something. You know, I have knowledge about stress, about compassion fatigue, the neurophysiological impacts. I talk about it all the time. I teach about it all the time, but it does not preclude a lapse in my judgment, i.e., pushing myself. When should I have pause? When should I have not squeezed in something in that few little minutes? And that alone, even squeezing it in, added to my anxiety. Can I just take this call and get through and still get ready for my 12:30 event that I had to get on? The other learning was that I must overcompensate. I think because I understand how I am and my propensity to maybe forget, uh, miss sight of what I should do to take that pause or take that break, I might. I doubt I like to think that I would never do that again, but I can't honestly say that because this is the third episode that I've had. And so my thinking at this point is, since I know and we know that stress is all around us, it is coming, 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 and so many things that we're anxious and anticipating happening in the country and the circumstances with this COVID and the vaccine and all of those things. What can I do? Well, the stress is going to come. It's there. It's coming in waves and waves and waves and waves. And so my learning is that I must overcompensate uh, by doing things to increase my capacity for inner self regulation. I need to plow in those habits for myself that I'm overriding the negative with the positives in my life, those things that lift me, those things that fill me, those things that recharge me, replenish me. Lessons learned. I wasn't paying attention beyond the obvious distresses. Got to think that through. I cannot put aside taking care of myself while I magically fix circumstances to make room for me. And that's one of the major changes that I'm making in my life. I was trying to get the company, the business, the work to a certain place where that I could now downshift and make space for myself. But that changed that day. I was thinking about that in the ambulance. I said, "About Lord, if I even get out of this, I'm not going to try to fix things first and then get to me. I've decided, I've made the choice to take care of me first and do what I can do to take care of the other stuff in the space that I allot to that." See, in other words, I'm prioritizing my health because I want to be there. I am to do the reverse, me, and then take care of the other circumstances. So I'm constantly trying to make those choices. My other thing is to realize and respect my vulnerability. I do. Yet that requires me to refocus on my 3 R's: to release, to reboot, to recharge, to release, to reboot, to recharge. I put another sign back up in my face, the seed to remember to do that. I can't let the day consume me so that I forget me. And I need to also measure my stress, my stress levels, my stress ratio by asking that question Brian Post taught me years ago. Where am I in the moment? Before I do something, ask myself, where am I in the moment, and take stock of what's going on inside, internally, mentally, emotionally. Am I pressured? Am I moving too fast? Pause. And then maybe say to myself, no, I think I'm going to step away from this desk and go get a cup of tea and step outside in the yard and get a little bit of fresh air, a little bit of sun. But I need to refocus constantly. Here's another thing that I was thinking about a lot, and I made a decision that I want us to consider ritualizing our self care. Ritualizing. And when I say ritualizing, that's putting it on a whole nother level of what's important, what you do, and how you do. This might sound silly, but when we get up first thing in the morning, we kind of do our basic little toiletry and brushing and shower and stuff like that. And I want the self care habit to have that same importance. You don't do anything else before you do that. You don't do anything. But so for me to make that decision I tend to take care of myself, my meditation, my prayer, my affirmation, whatever, in the morning. But every once in a while, I allow that to get pushed a little bit, or I shortchange it That's what I can do. I shortchange the time because I'm anxious to get to the work, the service, you see. And I know those of you who are at home and you're living with family and living with kids and you kind of get to that stuff and stuff is going on. Yet I want you to figure out to the best of your ability how you could ritualize your self care, your reboot, your recovery. You're preparing yourself even for the day that we know is going to be challenging. And also, I began to slip with how I utilize my accountability partners in my therapeutic community uh, to let them know that I'm sliding downhill. I don't know about you, but because this is a field that I have some expertise on and I talk, and sometimes when they call and they talk and they check in with me, I could tend to talk more as an expert or a colleague as opposed to just a friend who needs help to say, yeah, I'm on top of that, I think, but I realize I'm sliding downhill. I'm not doing as well as I would like to be doing with it. This stuff is really still kind of weighing on me, whatever the circumstances are. But to use that different, just remind yourself that we are vulnerable and we need people too, as much as we give and extend to others. And so my new life, uh, again, and I want to do this because, again, I realize that the stress will always be there. I was remembering one of my teachers years ago when I was training to work in post traumatic stress disorder. It was Dr. Michael Baum, and he came up with something that he called stress inoculation, which was part of his teaching on cognitive restructuring, how to think, how to drill down on that. I want to uh, put on a stress inoculation more. Again, that's part of the ritualizing your self care thing. But to, again, flood myself, particularly uh, with right brain kind of activities to get that wonderful culmination of right brain chemistry, you know, the endorphins, the dopamines, and the serotonins flooded. But to make that so much a part of my normal life is to say that when you get through at different points of your workday, and some of the content and the material is kind of rough, tough, distressing, to step out of the dark and step into some light, to kind of shift, code shift, to work on the hard stuff, and then to do something that just kind of lifts lights, brings some levity to the thing. I remember when Dr. Bruce Perry was teaching us about helping somebody with post traumatic stress disorder uh, to let them tell the story of the traumatic event. And when they kind of reach a point where the tension is so hard, to stop talking about the negative and shift the conversation to something that is delightful for them. But that's the same thing. I need to come out of the content that is heavy and dark and just take a few moments and get into some kind of light. Certainly at the end of the day, I am so into humor and comedy and stand up comedies and lightweight kinds of things that make me happy. Uh, but I also is important to look forward to. In the heavy times, sometimes I'm listening to something I said, "Oh Lord, this people or this person, this group is in so much pain," and when I help them with everything that I could give them, this is what I'm going to be doing later. This is going to be a lift. So there's kind of like this like escape valve in the back of your mind. You want to shift from the sadness to the humor. Talk about humor. I got to tell you something kind of ridiculous. Of all the things to worry about when I was laying in the ambulance and the paramedics were scrambling, fighting to save my life, uh, I realized at some moment that I forgot to put lotion on my face, on my feet. And that was at the point when they began to put those little strobes to do the little Doppler testing at different places in my body. But they reached down and lifted up my pants leg so they could put the strobes near my feet around my ankles. And I said, "Oh my God, I forgot to put on lotion on my feet." It's one of my habits. I'm being very candid. I said, now that I'm online and I'm sitting here when after I shower, I do remember I always put lotion on my arms and stuff and taking my face. And sometimes I forget to put it on my feet. I just don't bother because nobody gets to see it. But that does struck me. I'm laying in there struggling with heart failure, and I'm thinking that my feet was ashy at the time. But that's just a little stupid humor. I thought about that and that cracked me up after the fact. Also, I want to shift from worrying about what's happening in the country, about what's not happening soon or quick enough to kind of help us in certain ways around this COVID situation, into creating some new possibilities. I'm not a person to wait for things to really, really improve, but what can you put in place? What are your alternative ways of being so that you are just increasing the or improving the quality of your life? And shift from frustration to gratitude. I typically am there, but I'm just reminding you to do, because I'm talking to people frequently who are very, very frustrated about how long things are going on with this COVID situation. And I'm saying, well, let's just think about as much as you can the things that you're grateful for in spite of the things that we are restricted from and we can't do. Folks, I'm talking about the imperative uh, of getting into your right brain as much. Pull out the fun, pull out the game, pull out the activities, pull out the humor, pull out the creativity, make something, reinvent things, uh, have fun, be adventurous as much as you can, as much as you can. That is critical. The stress inoculation suggestions, again, drawing from what Dr. Michael Baum had talked about, it still pulls me right back to my 3 R's to remind you to do that. But let me reframe some of the 3 R's. Remember, those are release, reboot, recharge. But let me frame them this way. Given the level of stress and the risks the stress could cause broken heart syndrome, i.e., TCM. The release, we need to release suppress emotions. In other words, do some emotional detox. Uh, that detox means some things you need to offload, deal with feelings of unforgiveness and anger and bitterness and sadness and fear, mistrust, whatever is going on circulating in yourself. And when you release that stuff, you process that stuff. Don't reel it back in. With the yes buts, this is going in. And you're talking and you're still wallowing in it. It can affect us, and it pulls us down. It keeps the stress going. The reboot, obviously, primary to that is getting your sleep, getting your rest, and even when you can't sleep, just sit still some moment and close your eyes and kind of zone someplace. The reboot also, I'm reframing this way. Listen to your body. Listen to it. In retrospect, again, there were indications that something was wrong. I was not my best self, even when I was doing that broadcast that morning. But listen to your body. Listen to your intuition. The intuition, I honestly said to me, "Don't answer that phone. Don't answer that call. They could wait. If I had actually been already in a training and the call came, I would have never stopped to pick it up. They would have left a message, and I got back to them later. But sometimes there's a soft whisper in us saying, don't do it, don't do it." And practice listening to that and honoring that. And then the recharge, increase every opportunity for positive emotions. Share music, laugh, happy tears. I got into that, and those are simply sometimes at the end of the day, I go downstairs in the living room, cut on the TV, and I turn on YouTube. And one of the things I love, I enjoy, is I type in soldiers returning home and surprising their family, and there's this episode after episode after episode. They last about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes of these surprises, but they make me cry to see the joy and the elation and the surprise that people feel to be surprised by their loved ones returning from war. And I call them happy tears because it honors the fact that I need to cry. I need to cry. I need to release the emotions that we take on all the time when we're helping other people who are suffering. But it is happy tears because I actually feel happy for those people. One of my friends, who was a contributor to my book, Surviving Compassion Fatigue, he spoke about the fact that, he almost broke his life working with children who were suffering, traumatized, victimized. And as part of his recovery process, he also volunteered to work with children who had happier lives, fun and engagements. And so that's what I'm talking about, is to include those kinds of things that make you feel good, seeing people having a life that is blessed and full of joy. And your spiritual feeding is critical. Also, your social connections, embrace that. Um, My friend Gabriel Graham talks about it all the time, the power and the importance of staying connected. People like to say, well, I work on Zoom and I don't want to play on Zoom. I said, no, if that's all you have, get on Zoom and have a coffee chat, a tea chat, a cocktail chat, eat popcorn together, watch a movie together, laugh together, see somebody's face that you love and you enjoy, have a conversation that lifts you, but stay connected. The isolation is not healthy. And in addition to that, have a strong reason to live. Remind yourself of why you want to stay around, what do you want to be here, what do you not want to miss out on, who do you not want to leave behind. I've got a lot of people who've expressed so much love during this time for me and so much care. They sent prayers, they sent flowers, they sent cards, they sent words. Many of you did, and I thank you. I thank you for that. And those are reminders uh, that we have people to care. There's also a reminder to me that I want to be around here so we can enjoy. I owe it to myself, I owe it to my family, I owe it to you to put up the good fight so that we can continue to walk this journey of life together. So that's what I wanted to share. And I hope that that adds to your thinking and your determination and your willingness to make whatever shifts, and it will be many, necessary so that you could stay on wellness.
Wow, Beverly, what an incredible sharing. What an incredible story. I get choked up when I think about what the possibilities could have been because you're my dear friend as well as my client. Can't even imagine life without Beverly. So I'm glad that you are doing the necessary lifestyle changes to take you out of that danger zone. But taking a look back, what were some of the triggering causes that you think contributed to this?
Well, I have my own that's maybe clear to me, but there's some more that was handed to me by my social worker and my cardiac education person at the hospital. Mine, I could clearly say, was the all the aspects of the COVID-19 and how it's impacting my clients, but also the other people who my clients are trying to help. The racial climate, as I said, is shredding my soul um, about that. What's going on? Issues around the election and where we are, and the anticipation of more violence and injury, kind of like this Civil War thing that's really, really growing. The listing that they gave me included things like natural disasters, uh, major financial loss. So many people have lost business. That could be a trigger. People have lost everything that they've invested in. A flare of asthma, having a surgery, the outcome of the surgery, the disruptions of your body, being on chemotherapy, um, accidental overdoses of adrenaline as we're pushing and pushing and pushing. Those people in rescue and recovery flood their systems with adrenaline. Also, it said death of a loved one.
Hmm.
Yes, a sudden death, or even the anticipation of that happening and you can't get to them. That could be the triggering thing for people. And domestic abuse. Most of my folks, that many of my folks, particularly in the human trafficking situations and the child welfare situations and the adult protective situations, the escalation of abuses and fatalities is extremely high since the COVID situation. And all of those could be triggering factors, any number one. It could be a chronicity of things, Linus,
Well,
or a
it's
single event can hit you at the wrong time and
right.
boom.
And it's no wonder that this could be an special wake up call for those who are first responders, doctors, nurses, policemen,
Mm-hmm.
clergymen, EMTs, human service providers. They're on the front lines of responding to trauma. So
Yep.
all the more reason why you want to be aware what these certain triggers are. And in your case, you are basically a therapist to the therapist and to the first responders and all of that. So it's almost like a occupational hazard.
Yes,
Uh,
it is. That's a good term. That's a good way of looking at it.
yeah.
That's why I say the stress is going to come, and we have to figure out how to override it.
How to minimize that. Is
Yeah.
there what do the experts point out in terms of a clear cause? I mean, can this happen with someone who's healthy? and diet and has a healthy diet and exercise, can that happen to them too?
It can happen because if you're running and you're hiking and you're bicycling and you're eating a healthy diet, whatever that means for you, and you're not dealing with the stress. Because my doctor said to me 16 times, he was like up to here. He says, you got to come out of the stress. I said, but I've been eating better. You've got to come out of the stress. I've been taking my walks, like you said. He says, you got to come out of the stress so you could take your stress with you up the mountains and on the hiking trails, and still the stress will to take you over.
Hmm. So what can be done preventatively then? Because it almost sounds like when I'm listening to that it's inevitable that someone's going to experience this because you can't always predict when the stress is going to come. And if everybody's doing everything else to take care of themselves, um, how can you avoid this kind of event?
Your practices have to be, in addition to all of that stuff, directly related to mitigating and reducing the stress. What does that mean for people? There are some people who engage in things like yoga or the healing methodologies, or people who engage in things like meditation. And I find a lot of those people are doing well, really, really well. You acknowledge that the stress is there. You acknowledge that you're vulnerable to it. You acknowledge how much you're taking on a regular basis. And so you ritualize those times that you have the capacity. Our brains or our bodies follow the lead of the mind. What you're thinking about could shift the whole dynamic. So to meditate yourself to a state of calm where you release what is negative and replace it with what is positive, that has to be a ritualized part of your life to reduce it. They say to take care of the emotional part of you. They say to think differently about what is going on in your life, to be creative, to be in the state of gratitude, to tell yourself to use the thing. No, I'm not going to do this. Is not really what is important, but my health, so that I could continue to take care of myself first, sustain myself to improve the quality of my life. It has to be ritualized. This is critical to do.
So there is hope, but people
Yes,
have to really show up in their lives and take responsibility for going the extra mile in terms of doing all the other things, mostly recognizing that you're in stress and truly managing that stress and
yeah,
not just saying, oh, well, that's just the way it is, but truly addressing it and managing it. And
yeah.
for the people who are in those professions, caregivers, that's another thing. I can tell you a story right now of something that's going on with my one of my family members that I'm concerned about because she has a sick family member in her immediate family. They've had a serious surgery and they'll be coming home soon. And it was stressful getting up to that point of the surgery. Now it's going to be stressful for the recovery. And just thinking about what's going to be required of her because it's COVID, so she can't have people coming in and out. She's got to do this herself because his immune system is very low. Just thinking about that, just she was breaking down, just thinking about the stress of the future stress that's going to be coming when he returns home,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
something
yeah.
like
Stop,
that.
stop right there. Stop right there, because this is what one of the big this is one of the big triggers. Staying in a state of anticipation of how bad it's going to get. You got
Don't
to stop that. You got to stop that and not anticipate that. Make a list of what you can do. Make a list of the tasks as you know them. Divide those where you can. Don't always be the designated one in the family to take on everything, but delegate some things out and focus on what you could do and learn to be good. That anticipation releases or plows in the stress hormone into your body. Most caregivers, or statistically they say, they get in more trouble health wise than the people they're taking care of because of that.
That's right.
Worry,
That's right.
worry could destroy you.
So worrying about what's to come. But again, it seems like with caregivers, and what I hear you saying is that one way to manage some of that stress is to stay present. You
Yes.
can't protect the future. You can't change what happened in the past. Maybe yesterday wasn't that great when you're caregiving. Maybe today might be better, but to stay present and, 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time, to get through the day. Because you're absolutely right. You can work yourself into a tizzy just thinking about all the worst case scenarios that could happen, that
Mhm.
haven't happened, but they could happen. So that's very good
Here's
to
a,
know.
here's a model to use. We all know those people, and there's a few that I know, who manage stress really, really well. Actually, they're people who seem so connected, so grounded. I'm paying attention to them more and more, and I'm taking pages from their book. Using most of those people are people engaged in a lot of meditation or mindfulness kinds of activities. These are my new models of how to be, and their practices that I want to incorporate. They don't get stuck in worry. They don't get stuck in anticipating the next best thing that's happening. Things come, they deal with it, they process it, and then they put themselves in another whole mental, emotional, cognitive place with
Mm-hmm.
it. A whole totally thing. Their spirituality. You got to feed your spirit. You got to feed your spirit, whatever that means for you. Their connections to positive people. There's people we work with who are broken, and then there's also need to be people we work with that are not broken, that they're just up here and lifted. We need to figure all of that stuff out.
Wow. Well, Beverly, thank you so much for sharing your story, for giving us so much honest information that we can actually make some decisions about and move forward with. And for those of you who are listening to this in the replay, please let us know that you're listening in the replay, the hashtag replay in the comments. And for those of you who want to find out more about what Beverly does, because she is a compassion fatigue specialist or expert, she is the person who helps the helper. So she knows a lot about the kinds of things that really will wear you out. Now she has additional life experience in her own life about what happened to her by the kind of occupation that she does, which is the same thing of, helping the helper and, wearing yourself out in the process, or allowing that to enter into your bubble, which is, I mean, that's a human thing to do. So if that's the case, then you have to begin to take a look at, okay, what can I do to change my lifestyle? What can I do to change my reaction to these things so I don't end up in that situation? You don't have to have broken heart syndrome, but it's a very real reality if you don't start providing lifestyle choices that are going to help minimize your stress. So thank you so much. And you can go to wellnessreset.net to find out more about what Beverly does. Beverly has a book called Surviving Compassion Fatigue. And in that book are some really value added steps of things that you can do to help minimize the stress in your life. So I highly suggest that you go to her website and purchase that book. Beverly, thank you. Wow, so much. I'd love
Thank
to
you.
hear from you all. Please share your comments and thoughts about what you thought about this broadcast, or any information you'd like to share in terms of how you regulate your stress. Right now, in this day and age, we really have to share more information with each other, support each other, be there for each other in different ways. And sharing is caring. So any information that you have to share that might be able to help someone that's going through a particularly stressful time, please do share. Beverly, thank you so much for being here
Thank you,
today,
Lynn.
sharing your story. And I'm so glad you're back.
Me too. All right,
Right.
everybody, have a wonderful week. Well, when I say wonderful, there are challenges ahead, but stay safe and stay well. Be vigilant of what's happening inside of you. Attend to that realistically, ritually, consistently. See you next Monday.
Bye bye.
God bless.